All right, and the first error that I want to work on is the missing field. So when we were setting up the schema, we set up 3 properties to be required. So if one or multiple are missing, we are going to be getting back the errors, and we'll have access to those errors in the error handler. So now what I want to do is set up the condition where I check for that error. And the error is going to look something like this. So if I'm going to go to a postman and if I'm going to remove the name, you'll notice that a response comes back something like this. So the message is going to be equal to a error object. And in there, we have the errors property, which is an object itself. And then in there, every field that is going to be missing is going to be added as a property. Also in that error object, so the main one, not in the errors, that's a separate property. But on the main error object, we also have these properties where we have the message, name, and also one more message. So this one is with an underscore where the fields are displayed, the ones that are missing. And if there's only one field, then we'll get this response. But if there's, for example, 2 fields missing, you'll notice that there are more properties in the errors object. Again, there's one big error object, and then inside of it, first we have errors property. So these are all the fields that are missing. At the moment is just one, but if I remove the email, and as I note, I need to set up proper syntax. Now notice, not only I have the name, I also have the email in the errors property. And then on the object, the error object, there's also properties here for the name and message. And here's what I want to do. I want to first check the name property. And if it's going to be equal to validation error, then we know that we'll have to change some things around, because at the moment I'm sending back 500 and that's not what I want. Actually, I want to send back 400 because it is a bad request. That's number one. Number two, we're sending back this giant object. How useful that is to the front end? Well, not really. We kind of want to shorten this up a bit and send just, hey, listen, the field is missing, or stuff along those lines. And the way we can do that, first, I can just pass in the message if I want. That's definitely an option. But in our case, I'll also show you how we can iterate over these properties in the errors object, the property on the error object, and then we'll just grab the message over here. So notice we have email, and then we have the message, and the same goes for the name one. Again, 2 options. This probably is a faster, but I think that one is a bit more concise, the second option. So let's start working on that. I'm going to navigate back to our project, and where I have the error handler, first thing that I want to check is if in the error object, the name property is equal to validation error. How's that going to look like? Well, I can go with if error. So that's the main object, not the errors property inside of it. A big distinction. And I'm going to say if the error name is equal to, and if you want, you can type it out. But in my case, just so I can avoid some silly bugs, I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to set it up as validation error. And if this is the case, first thing that I want to do is change the status code. Because like I said, it's not 500 anymore. It is 400. It is a bad request. How do we do that? Well, we go with default error, then status code, and that is equal to, and then let's use our status codes, and then we're looking for bad request. So that's number one. Number two, what I can also do is change this message, where I'm going to say, if this is the case, then the default error message property is going to be equal to my error. And then remember this property over here, we also have the message, correct? So we can just go here with error and message, like so. And now, of course, you probably want to see the response. So let's just change this around, where I'm going to leave this one just in case I ever want to use it. I want to send it back, and then I'll copy and paste and uncomment this one. And instead of the error that we're sending back, what I want to do right now is send back the default error and then the message. Let's save this one. And what you'll notice right now in the postman, once we send it, we should get back 400. That's number one. And then we get this message: user validation failed, email and name. And definitely you can keep it like this. But in my case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to comment this one out just so it stays for your reference. And instead, what we're going to do, we're going to look in that errors object. And in there, I'll look for the property values. So remember, that was a giant object where we had all the fields that are missing: the name, the email, and password. I will set them up as array. I'll iterate over them, and then I'll join the messages together. Now, since probably this is a little bit confusing, I'll comment this one out and let's send it one more time. So let's send it, and you'll notice this errors, right? So in JavaScript, we have object.values, which essentially is going to set up all these properties as an array. So whatever you have over here. So in my case, I have the email and I have the name. And then I'll iterate over that array. And I'm just going to look for these messages, just so I have a little bit shorter error response. Just in case you need to jog your memory on object.values method, the MDN docs is a very good place to start. So let's navigate back over here, and let's just simply say default error message is going to be equal to object values. And this is going to set up all the property values as an array. And what properties I'm looking for? Well, I'm looking for error. That's the main one. And then more specifically, errors object. And then once I have that, I can just chain.map, and then I'll call this an item. So now I'm talking about each and every property over here, and I want to access this message. So let's navigate back here. And let's say that as I'm iterating, I want to return the message, and I want to join them together as one string. So chain.join, and let's just add a comma in between. And once I have this code in place, now again, I will uncomment this one and comment out entire error response. So if we go back to the Postman and if we send it, notice, not only I have 400, but I also have please provide email, please provide name. So if I'm going to set up my name back up, and in this case, I'm going to go back with John, you'll notice that now I only have please provide email. Again, if you're somewhat iffy on this code, you can always use this error and message. And lastly, let me just point out something where, remember, when we were setting up the user, we were also checking for the valid email. So just to reiterate, in the user schema, we check for empty values, we check for unique email, which we're going to cover in the next video. And also we check for valid email. And what's really nifty, that it actually gets handled with our validation error as well. And if you want to test it out, go to a Postman and try to set up the user with some kind of invalid email. So in this case, I'm going with email and then 1@1. And what you'll notice when you send back is the message as well as the status code. And in the message, it clearly says, please provide valid email, which is again, super, super cool because we don't have to handle that separately. So not only we're handling missing fields, we're also handling a valid email.